go, let's go, let's go.
All right,
Friday,
ready to mark it.
Community Beacon, 5:30. We are live. I'm excited about this
Yes.
episode. I am
All right.
excited. I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm ready to get into it. I'm Mike Seville, your real estate guy here in Palm Beach County, Northern Palm Beach County, to be specific. Of course, on the other side.
My Seville, yeah. Mic drop. Michael Seville is the real deal.
I'll take it. I absolutely take it. Of course, on the other side of the camera, on the other side of the screen, rather, we have my brother from another mother, the incomparable Joel Simmons of the Tenacity Foundation. Oh, man. What is going on,
All
brother?
right, fella. Hey, man. It's going on. You going on. We going on. God is blessing us. And I can't stop saying that. I'm very, very grateful. Very grateful. God is good to us all the time. So I'm filled with gratefulness. That's where it's at.
All right. What are we at? 2 o'clock, 2 minutes in, and we can jump right into it. I think we got a lot of ground to cover. We
Mhm.
only have a short amount of time. There's absolutely no way we'll be able to get all this into one show. So we've decided actually to do a series in regards to the family court and what's going on here in Palm Beach County. And really, a lot of it is coming from my experience as well. For those of you who don't know, I just finished that up, had trial last month. And so I'm going to jump around a little bit in regards to exactly what's going on, what I thought was going to happen, what I expected to happen, and how we kind of made it through. Um, one of the things that, and the brother brought this up, several episodes ago, but I remember there was a long time ago. He and I had a conversation in regards to like learning and getting information and performing. And I told him, I said, listen, you just got to give me 3 months. Give me 3 months. Give me the information. Get me around people who know the information, and I'm going to soak it up. And if I can't, then it is what it is. But if you give me 3 months, most anything, I can definitely get into it. So I'll definitely get into this, and it was a lot longer than 3 months. So there's a lot of information. I definitely want to start off. Let me put this banner up as we start because we're in a sticky situation. Guys, read it on the bottom. I am not an attorney. This is based on personal experience and it's for informational purposes only. I might leave that up for a couple of minutes. Please consult with a licensed attorney for legal advice. Absolutely. Every case is different. If you speak to almost any lawyer, most of them will, and you ask them a question, they will tell you depends. They will tell you depends when it comes to family court or probably any court case for that matter, but we're specifically talking about family court. And when I speak on it, I'm going to be speaking in generalities. I don't know your situation. I don't know exactly what you have going on. So I will be speaking in generalities. You all forgive me for that. I'm not really going to get specific into things because, once again, everyone has their story. And we don't have the time to go through it all, but I definitely want to give us a brief synopsis on it all. All right. Where should we
Hey,
begin?
man. Listen. I am coming to hear a lot of what's going to be happening and to engage with you. I was hoping that a few other people would be able to join in because this is a serious, it's a serious situation. It's a serious scenario in people's lives, and there's a lot of people that are affected by this. Right? It's the
Absolutely.
parents, the father, the mother, the children. Right? And that's the inner circle. Right? Like in fire department, we have what's called an inner circle, outer circle. That's the inner circle, the people that are inside the house. But when you start looking at the outer circle, there's greater bandwidth. Now we're starting to talk about parents on both sides, grandparents on both sides, maybe cousins, maybe uncles and aunts. Then we also start to get into how are the development of the friendships and the shared friends between people when you start to think about this, and also the people that kids are friends with at school. So I'm ready to dive into this, man. Ready to dive into this. Definitely, I'm going to put that shout out to Jackie and to my boy Mr. Trombone also for jumping on in. All right, man, let's go. I'm going to be up here with questions, brother. So you go ahead and start this off, man. Bring it.
All right, awesome, guys. I'm there's several things when especially in regards to the family court system, uh, and there's reasons why. So I'm going to get into a little bit of the history as to why, and I'm going to say what happens up until this point. When we speak about wealth, one of my key beliefs and understandings is that the biggest, some of the biggest things that affect wealth have to do with family dynamics. They have to do with especially when really in a negative way. So the family court system, taxes, or really ignorance about the taxes, ignorance about the family court system, as well as I always say prison as well. Like those three things are some of the biggest detriments to wealth overall. So you're dealing with this so-called system. Some people would say that the system is biased. I would say the system is not biased because the system is inanimate. There's laws and statutes that, excuse me, that are happening within the system. It's a mechanism. However, there are biases within the system. Now, up to this point, and of course, this is recently, so in the last year, maybe 2 years, and after really digging into it, and you would think that with the amount of people who are affected by this, we would have more information. You would get a clearer understanding. But as I started to get into it, as I was drawn into it rather, I started to notice that a lot of people don't quite understand what's going on, and we kind of start to chalk a lot of these things up. And guys, I'm going to go somewhat fast. So if you have questions or anything, like we can see it. So if you have questions or you have thoughts or you want to share something, definitely put it into the comment section, and we'll definitely stop. I think me and the brother are pretty good with actually putting your stuff on the screen and engaging. So let's get to it, because as of in the last 2 years, we've had quite a shakeup in the system, and this is introduced by bills. Because at this point in time, a lot of, and I'm going to speak from the male side of it, a lot of brothers are fed up with how it goes. There's a lot of, we say biases, and I'll get into a why. But as of the last 2 years, I'm gonna put up this quickly. Our governor DeSantis put in what we call the fathers first, but it was HB 775. It's a Florida law signed in by Governor Ron DeSantis in 2023 that gave unwed fathers the presumptive rights to equal time sharing with their children. And it says the bill aims to provide more balance. I couldn't put it all in that one. It's only 200 characters. So keep that in mind. Now, prior to that, and this is what leads up to this bill, was that there was a lot of brothers who, especially if you were unwed, you didn't necessarily have rights to the children. I mean, you could go in and you could sign the birth certificate. I know a lot of people thought that was the case. If I go in here and I sign this birth certificate, I'm automatically given rights. This is not the case. Oh, there we go. This is not the case. You're not automatically given rights. You actually have to petition for these rights. But as of that bill, now we can look at the mothers who tend to be, what's the saying? Mothers, babies, fathers, maybes, right? So
Mm.
prior to this prior to this bill, if and if you're married, it's a whole different ball game. Once again, not going to be able to give a master class on that tonight. I'm going to speak specifically in regards to the unwed parents. Fathers, if you're married, if you are married to the mother, then whether or whether or not the baby is yours, according to the law, the baby is yours. And you actually have to go through a process of de-establishing paternal rights with the child. So that's something interesting all within itself, but that leads us to this point. So, like I said, mentioned, if you're unwed, you still, even with DeSantis's bill, and even with the cries that saying, "Oh, now Florida is a father's state, father's right state." What I would say with this bill, this DeSantis bill, it's more so of a leveling of the playing ground, and it had already been happening, right? But you do have to put in bills, you do have to put in statutes in order for it to be. Here's the presumptive right. It has to be presumed by law. So no one understand that. Like you, if you're unwed to the mother and the mother's saying that you are the father of the child, you do have rights. However, you do have to petition for custody if, say, the mother withholds time sharing of the child. Now, why? Why has it been like this thus far? And I'm going to go to. I got a lot of notes for you. And this was a lot of new things for me as well, learning this stuff in the process. We have what we call the tender year doctrine. And this is what it was defined at, but a lot of people still live by this tender years doctrine, which is an outdated legal principle that favored mothers in custody cases, especially with younger children. So what it's saying that up until and here's the thing, a lot of us may agree with this. That's saying up until the child is 5 or 7, whatever number it is, biologically, the mother is probably more important to the child than the father is. You have mothers who breastfeed, mothers tend to be nurturing. They had the child for 9 months. So a lot of people, and here's the key word, they feel this way. They feel that the mother, and this is, and perhaps we can do our research on it because it's been that way since time immemorial. But a lot of people, it's become from, this is what was practiced as a legal principle, and this is like from the late 1700s until what, like the 1950s, no, late 1800, late 1800, 1950s. But you got to remember, prior to no fault divorces, people weren't really getting divorced. The mother or more than likely be with the be with the father. A lot has changed in the last 50 to 60 years to the point where we've got now. However, it's been hundreds of years. We thought, mother and child, especially like I said, in the earlier times of this child. So people still feel this way. That's why you'll have mothers who will say, well, who believe or feel and believe essentially that they are more important to the child than the father. So if you see a mother withhold a child, especially initially for the first 6 months to a year, most people would side with the mother because they're saying, well, hey, this child needs its mother at this young age. That is what was believed and is actually practiced. It's the tender years doctrine. Now, at around late 1960s, 1970s, this started to change. This started to change from the tender year doctrine to what is now the best interest of the child. Now, and when you go to, and if you go to court and you speak in regards to children and so on and so forth, this is what it's going to be based on. It's going to be the best interest of the child, and each state has its own best interest factors. Florida's, and I have it up here, Florida's is 61.13. Let me tell you something first. Let me slow it down. If you're watching this or you're showing somebody, this is going to save you a lot of time. This is going to save you thousands of dollars if you understand these processes. Thousands of dollars is going to save you a lot of time. Once again, please read the description below. However, this is a deep dive into it. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, please put it into the chat. So now we're at Florida Statute 61.13, which is our statute, and there's like 20 factors, best interest factors for children. Brother, and if you have a question, brother, I'm here as well. 20 interest factors. And if you go before a judge and you actually go to trial, the judge essentially goes down this list. The judge is going to, as you start to present evidence, you start to argue your case, you start to argue why you believe you should have, exactly what's going on within the case, how much time you should have, so on and so forth. You're going to go down the best interest factors. And this is actually going to be in the order. The order actually also has the best interest factors with the judge writing notes as to whatever it was their ruling was. And here's the next thing with family court is that the judges have a lot of discretion. They have to rule definitely on the statutes. They definitely have to rule on the evidence that was shown. However, they have a lot of discretion as to how and what it is that they take, what they show weight to. So it's very important to pay attention to what exactly that judge is. And this is where kind of what I spoke about before, where there is a system, right? But there is biases within the system because naturally, if you're a judge and you experienced this or you came up this way, you're going to kind of go heavily, kind of weigh in a certain kind of direction. It is what it is. These are just biases that most people have. And so they're going to put more weight on certain evidence. They're going to put weight on certain arguments. They're going to put weight on certain factors. However, at the end of the day, the judge still has to come back to the best interest factors. Here's a interesting tip with us talking about the judges is that judges here in Palm Beach County specifically, they get voted, they have terms for 6 years. So every 6 years they come up for, appointment, re-election, so to speak. We vote on them. So when we start to hear a lot of this issues with these different judges, we have the judges and they're so conservative and so on and so forth. So yes, some of the judges may be appointed, but after 6 years, they do come up on the ballot. We have judges that are going to be on the ballot this year. So it behooves you if you want to put forth an effort instead of just complaining, because unfortunately we get a lot of complaining in the men's circle in regards to going to court. This is a women's system. And my experience, this is not the case. What I've seen is a lot of men going up and throwing themselves upon the mercy of the court. And that means absolutely nothing. Either throwing themselves upon the mercy of the court or just ignoring everything altogether. Some guys, go ahead, brother.
Jump in right there. Because just from my background piece and where you're headed with this one segment, having dealt with so many different men that are having this type of struggle, right? The difficulties inside of the household, they try to work things out, and divorce comes up. And now there's children are there. So it becomes a difficult thing. Learning this information, and I think that you said it just probably about 5 minutes ago, learning all of this information, everybody is not as studious as you are, and everybody doesn't do the type of research that you do. This is a deep dive, right? I mean, this is not like, hey, I'm just going to go online and figure out the definition of Tinder years. That's not what this is. This is, all right, this is what that means. Let me go deeper. Let me find out case studies. This is the type of research that you're bringing to the table. This is one of those types of episodes that for men, women, I guess as
absolutely.
well. But for those that are going through this type of process, this is what you want to save this right here, and what we're going to be digging into, because like I've had to deal with some of these men, and they don't have the answers. They don't have half of the information that you just gave in the last 10 minutes. Not half of it. And this is not your field of study. And it just makes it almost crushes me when I think about the words that I've heard from these men about their attorneys and what they were saying. Because it felt as if the attorneys were just like, you know what? She's the mother. Even when the mother, this is going to get a little raw for some of you all out there. I don't know another way of saying this. Even when the mother was sleeping with another man in front of the children, and the children told on the mother, the attorney of the father still said it wasn't enough. Not even in the bedroom. I'm talking about in open. This was rough. And listening to some of these men have to call me up and say, my child is asking me if mommy is okay because she's in the front room with another man and she's saying certain words. That is hard to deal with. For the attorney to come back and say, listen, man, I don't know what to tell you. You know, it's a woman's world when it comes down to who can best serve these children. And when a man is showing that he has been in best interest for the children, I think that is a difficult thing. So, like I said, I just wanted to throw that nugget in there because it's like, this is the harsh realities. I know you're going down the ABCs and the one, two, threes. But I just wanted to bring a tad bit of that back to the actual struggle. And I know that if there's anybody
Oh
who
yeah.
knows that struggle, I get it. I'm talking. I know who I'm speaking with. But I just wanted to go back and testify like this is a serious struggle. This is a serious thing going on. Like, how does somebody get this information that you're providing right now?
So you gotta jump in and let's be honest. Let's talk about these attorneys because what I learned in regards to the attorneys lent a lot to my business as well. I said, wait a minute. You got to think about the successful model of an attorney, right? Like, and a successful model of an attorney let's think of a successful attorney. You want to have around 20 to 30 cases going on monthly, right? That doesn't mean that you're getting paid on all 20 to 30 cases. Maybe you did take a retainer, but this is a process. This is when patience really has to come into play. I heard my judge personally say we like to get these cases done within 180 days, and the same judge is saying I got 400 to 600 cases on my caseload. So you got the attorneys who are doing 30 to 40 cases a month to be successful. I mean, you got to think, I got to pay for this office. I got paralegals. I have, if you see the booklets of info, let me put it in. If you see the booklets of information, I mean, you have folders and folders of information. But to keep all of this information, having 30 different clients and being able to maneuver that, what you have to do and I'm going to talk about the men because it's really generally, right? I spoke about this generally. This is going to happen to men. You really have to lead your case, but like the brother said, where do you get this information? I don't even know what this guy, what this certain specific example that you're referring to, but this goes into status quo, because what happens is that if you don't get a move on it and you're not diligent, if you don't understand your situation and the type of person that you're dealing with, which is where I say most men tend to live in la la land. And a lot of attorneys and people who are in the space will say it as well, like, you men are more romantic in that thought process than the women are in this space. So men
And,
tend to
and, and
say,
they show up feeling like they're defeated.
yeah, yeah. But men, you as a man, most men are like, this is my experience in talking to a bunch of men in the space. They can't even fathom what is going on. Like the average person, especially if this man was, you had kids with this person, you had possibly multiple kids with this person, you don't think that this is happening. But sometimes a lot of these things get uncovered, and certain people can become very spiteful. And I'm gonna get into this. We're gonna get into that on a later episode of the show. Let me keep talking about some of these different things. So we spoke about the Florida statute for best interest interest factors, and there's, like I said, there's about 20 that goes to Florida statute 61.13. Here's where people get here's where something changes as well. Now there's a statute for child support that's separate from the best interest factors. So the statute for child support is 61.30, and that outlines the guidelines for determining child support and obligations. Child support and custody or time sharing are two separate things in the eyes of the court. So a person can file for child support and it has nothing to do with how much time you get in custody. And then you can file for custody, and child support is something in addition to that gets talked about. So you'll hear in the space a lot of people who are the woman or man, whoever's the custodial parent. I'm gonna say normally it's the woman, right? They'll file for child support, and the man will say, "Well, I don't get, I got to pay X amount, and I don't get to see my child. Like, how come I don't get you're withholding my child, and I'm paying X amount of money?" Well, these are two totally separate things that you got to deal with. So just because someone files for child support doesn't mean that you automatically get time with your child. There's no plan attached to it. There's no order. There's no time sharing order that was signed for that. You and that person have to come to an agreement, hopefully an agreement before you get to the judge in regards to it. So now you're saying in your mind, well, I'm paying $1,000 a month, 600, 1,000, whatever that may be, and child support is based on overnights. Well, if I file for child support and I tell them that you don't get any overnights, you're responsible for 100% of your share of whatever it is. Once again, child support we can have child support as a totally separate, that's a show within itself. But I just wanted to make that clear to some people that just because you're paying child support or you're put on child support, sometimes the state picks up child support, especially if the custodial parent is getting any kind of state benefits, whether that's they file for Medicaid. I'm sure people say, well, all of a sudden she sent me this child support, she ain't tell me nothing about it. Well, if she filed for Medicaid, the state is picking that up because the state wants its money. So if the state has the mother and the child on Medicaid, you need to pay for that. So this is a whole different ballgame. But once again, you got people who it's the ignorance of it. Ignorance is probably going to be our number one enemy. Ignorance is number one. Status quo is going to be number two.
Rewind that piece right there again,
Yeah.
because now we're talking about money and child support. How does that line? How does this line up?
How does money? How do we figure out child support?
Yes.
So child support is going to be largely based on the income of both parents and then the overnights. Then underneath that, you'll start to have things that
The
child care.
overnights being how often the child is staying with mother or father.
Right, right. There's my little one coming to check me out.
All right.
So how and be clear, it doesn't matter if you have the child. Now some states are different. I just recently heard about Arizona, which is interesting because the tide is shifting, and it's shifting pretty fast. A lot of people may not like it, but it's shifting pretty fast in Arizona, where they do count if you have the child for 4 hours during the daytime, they do count that towards child support. However, in Florida, it's overnights. So if you work an overnight job, let's say you work the third shift as a father, and you come home and you say, well, you know what, I'm going to take care of this child throughout the day because mom goes work from 8 to 5. If that child is not staying over your house and you don't live with the custodial parent, if that child is not staying over, you're responsible for the full 100% of child support. Now that's going to be based on in Florida 365 days. So really out of 182.5 days. So this is where we start to hear about the 50-50, that comes into play, 40, 60, 30, 70. And I want to say, don't quote me on this, but if you're below 20 to 25%, it doesn't count. I want to say that, but don't on that. So you really, so I and really you should want to be in your child's life anyways, is what I say. Is that you want to be above that 25 to 30%. Now 30% is like every other weekend and a day. Now that was like here's some of the things that you'll learn, that each state, then each county has its own standard, timeshare. Once again, thank God for DeSantis and the bill for unwed fathers. It's presumptive 50-50. Someone would have to come by, the opposite side, opposite party, opposite opposing counsel, party would have to say why you don't do it. So it could, a lot of things could be used against you, whether you are in the fire department. So the fire department could be used against you because you're on shift. What is it? Was it 113? Some fire departments are like 1-3, or you know,
Yeah, so it's going to be different. There's in the state of Florida, you have one on, three off. You have one on, two off with the Kelly Day. You also have some that are running like some of the private organizations, which are running a first, second, and a third shift, right? And then when you start to get into like police, you start looking at 12-hour shifts, and it's going to be like a 4-3, right? And then you also go into nursing because men
yep,
are nurses, right? So then
women
you're
are
also
nurses,
looking
right?
at 4-3s as well. Women and men are nurses. So you're going to be looking at those types of, and so that makes it real difficult when you have a 4-3 and the 12-hour slot that you have is going to be, it's going to be like 7 to 7, AM to PM, because you basically are only picking up your child for that night.
See, so you can do it, right? You can pick up the child for that night, and you can figure out, okay, the child needs to, maybe your mother comes in from 7 to 8, and then maybe you can have something in on the back end to where you can come and pick up your child. However, a lot of these because it's the best interest factors, if the opposite party can more can take care of the child, can prove that it's in the best interest of the child for it to have a different type of schedule than you. But if you're overnights and the opposite party doesn't want to work with your schedule as far as 1-3 or whatever, the Kelly days, whatever it is, then that also can be used against you. And then once again, this is male and or female. Now, let's be once again, the system is the system. There is still biases towards mothers to some extent, right? Like there's still bias. So I would say that there's going to be some kind of leeway. In my experience, I've noticed that there's some kind of leeway, but you got to figure it out. At the end of the day, I'm coming to tell you that you got to figure it out, and you are going to have to make decisions and choices. This is what I'm noticing, and there's a story in the Bible. And this
All
this
right,
has
you're talking my language.
it's a story in the Bible, and I came to this conclusion a couple months ago because it can get rough with different people. If people don't know how to handle it, people don't have certain outlets, so on and so forth, going through this court system. But it came to my like thought process of this is this court system is the splitting of the child. Like, make you know no qualms about it. This is when Solomon had the two mothers, and they
Okay.
told and they told a mother that, he said, well, I'm going to split this child, and the real mother said, you know what, you could take the child, and the other person said, go ahead and split the child because it wasn't her real child. Her child had already died in childbirth. By the time you get to trial, this is exactly what it is. And some people are more compassionate, some people are more understanding, and I'm not here to judge anyone. I think, everyone has to make the best decision in their mind, for themselves and for their children, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, when you go in front of that judge, you are splitting your child, and it's going to have ramifications in regards to it. I've noticed with children that children end up having at least three different personalities. They're going to have a personality at the mom's house, they're going to have a personality at the dad's house, and they're going to have a personality, of themselves as they come into themselves at school, or around friends, and so on and so forth. But you are splitting the child, and a lot of people don't want to take what comes with that. And so if you don't accept this in some kind of way, if you don't accept that essentially this child is being split, this is where I think a lot of problems start to tend to occur within it. So let me see what else we got. Let's
Well, I
talk
mean,
about. Go ahead.
let's touch base on that real quick, man, because you start bringing up Bible verses, and I want to talk a little bit. Just dealing with that out of the book of Second Chronicles, right? And you start Second Chronicles chapter 1, and you start thinking about this decision that Solomon made. This was a crazy decision. Everybody is watching Solomon as he's making this decision, and he calls for a sword to split the baby in half. The way that you just posed that is, it makes you want to tremble. Just how you just posed that, because you said you are literally splitting the child, and this is what's going on. We're splitting up babies, right? The difference in that scenario was that one mother was not a mother to that child, and the other mother was. And the true love of the mother shined when she was willing to give give her child away to save its life. When we start to get into these court systems, it's almost like, yo, bring the sword, right? Because the truth begins to show up. How much of what is happening inside that court system is really based on the love for the child rather than the love for oneself, or the need for oneself, or the need just to see the other person not have, which, by the way, was part of what happened in that story. The false mother actually said, split the child, because they were so jealous that they had overlaid their baby and killed their baby that they would prefer that nobody have a child than they not have a child. That is scary when you start thinking about a father and mother who are not even discussing whether the child will be good. They're just willing to split the child because of the difference between the father and the mother. Can you speak a little more to that? Like, from a standpoint of, from a personal standpoint, if you will, or from a study dealing with the different people that you talk with?
And I say it gets to that point because only one person is going to have it. So this is almost like it's not even, it can be taken out of a person's hands at this point, especially if you want to be in the life of the child. So by the time you get in front of the judge, at least one person has made the decision to say, I'd rather split the child than figure this out. The judge does not want to see you in there. So when people say this, oh, it's a corrupt system and the judge gets paid, believe you me, didn't I say the judge said she had 400 to 600 cases? And that was brought down. Like, she's like, and I got that down. Like, this is a judge talking to us. She's like, I got it down. She's not worried about me being in there. She has, if she gets paid, let's say this is the truth. I don't know how true it is, but let's say this is the truth. If she gets paid based on cases and her ruling orders, and some people say it's because of the child support, it's $1 billion system, the feds, and there's some truth to it. The feds do pay certain states for X amount. She has more than enough. She has 600 cases she has to deal with. 400 to 600 cases, which she said she brought down. So she's going to send you, and this is what she ended up doing. She says, initially, this is part of the procedures, you need to go to mediation. So they send you to mediation, work it out. Okay. A person decides, and it only takes one person to decide they don't want to work it out. Then you notice for trial at that point in time. The judge says, okay, well, trial is set for whenever, could be months ahead of time. Prior to trial, one of the things she's going to say, within 60 days of trial, I want you to go to mediation again. Figure this thing out. Because, and most attorneys, I think any good attorney would tell you, you want to figure this out before. You don't want the judge to figure it out. In certain,
and granted, you never want anybody to figure anything out for your household.
For your household, you don't. And the judge, in my experience, the judge did not want to. They're just like, what are we here for, right? So figure it out. And I don't want to talk down on anybody, because what I've learned to do within this entire process, and which I think most people should do because it helps to keep your sanity, is to detach and to separate the behavior from the person. Because a lot of the behaviors that are going to come out or sometimes happen can be downright evil. And if you don't separate it, it'll drive you. It can. I've seen it drive a lot of people in a certain type of way, where they feel helpless and hopeless because has to do with a child, something that you love, and now you're putting it into a system that is essentially it's just a number. It's a case number, and
Yeah.
and you have several people telling you to work it out. And but you do have some people that are also fanning the flame. You got some attorneys still have to get paid. And that's another thing within the whole system is that it can get very expensive. Even Florida being a 50-50 state, I say if you don't have someone to kind of guide you in the direction, and I did a lot more research than most people that I know, you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on your side. I don't know. It doesn't even, and if the other person has some form of income and so on and so forth, they're going to spend it. Credit cards get maxed out, 401ks get touched. Like a lot of I've heard hundreds of thousands of dollars. One of my attorneys spent $150,000 on their divorce. $150,000. You see people who don't have it spending 60, 70, 80,000 dollars on these different proceedings, and it's fanned by some people. It's fanned by some. Here's another thing: what you definitely want a good support system, and not a support system that just validates everything you say. A support system that tells you, "Hey, listen, you may be taking this a little bit too far." Like, is it at what point, you want a support system that says, well, what is this about? Is this about the child, or is this about spite? Is this out of spite? Like exactly what is this for? And because with a lot of this money that's being spent, you could have spent the money on a solution to this thing. You know what I mean? These could have been spent on flights. This could have been spent on education. This could have been spent on investments. This could have been a lot of different things. So you definitely, when I say a support system, I'm telling people who are telling you, and I always like to check. I'm like, man, I know the brother probably heard me say it, but I ask people, my close inner circle, I say, man, am I tripping? Like, I always say, like, is it me? Like, is it me? Like, is it me that's taking it too far? Who's good for it? Beethoven's like, yeah, man, you're going a little bit too far on this one. But the brother on the other side of the screen also does it as well. So it's important for us to, and hopefully I answered your question, brother, in regards to the splitting of the child. Like by the time that's what you're asking to happen, because there's multiple times, but sometimes there's so much feelings and certain things involved, especially like once again, you go to a mother, and so I have compassion on the
I mean,
mother.
that's where it's at right there. We
Yeah,
discussed this maybe a week or two ago about learning how to divide your emotions from the rational thought process, from the decision making process, and again, what the scripture that you brought up, the reason that Solomon was considered to be so wise was because he took the rationale and he
right.
utilized that, and he invoked a feeling that came about, and only the truth was able to shine. It's like in this type of system, it's got to be terribly difficult for a judge, with all due respect, to try to invoke the real and true feeling to come out of, a husband and wife or a father and mother, to be able to bring about the most positive decision for that child. Because I don't think that everybody is walking into that courthouse saying, let me just figure out what I can do to make sure that our kid, because we already had this kid, it's our baby.
Mm-hmm.
He's the dad, she's the mom. He's already here. I can't stand him, I can't stand her, but we brought this child in here. So it's not about being diplomatic anymore. It's about what is the right thing to make sure that they get the proper education, the proper food, the proper clothing, the proper social environment. How do we make this a good citizen and a healthy and a healthy individual to a family that 20 years, 30 years from now, they will raise on their own, like forward thinking.
I once again, my experience and the judge that I happened to come before, I thought she did the best she could. I thought for me personally, some of the questions she asked, some of the thoughts that she had surrounding it, her directing it. Once again, 400 to 600 cases, you don't have that much. Like for most people, you're going in there, and this is going to highly impact the future of this child, the children, and your family as a whole, regardless of how you want to put it. It's going to impact it. And you don't get that much time with a judge. A lot of people think, oh, the judge is gonna. The judge don't care. We'll get into that into another episode as regard, not like how you do, anyways. But from my experience, I thought she did an awesome job of trying to bring up certain things and being as fair as she can. I saw her make a ruling on something in regards to in regards to the case, and I said, oh, she made that ruling because she knew that somebody couldn't take it. So in the
Hmm.
best interest of the child, because at some point in time, if you start to see people who are constantly cutting their nose to spite their face, you gotta take pause and say, well, you know what? That mother or that father can take it a little bit better than this person, because I think this person's gonna crash out in regards to this decision. You know what I mean? Like you don't know what's going on in other people's minds, but she's seen so many people. I'm sure she's seen so many cases. Like I said, if you're over 400, 600 cases, I'm sure you start to notice certain patterns within certain people. And you can say, you know what? It's better for it to go that way. So maybe using your biases, especially if there's that wiggle room. Once again, judges have a lot of discretion within family court. And once again, I thought our judge did an awesome job. I don't know if I'm going to be marching against her in 2026, but I definitely think a lot of us who have issues with judges or how judges rule, and you can get a list of their rulings if you're really serious about this, instead of just complaining and knowing that they come up on the ballot. This is a perfect time to get 100 people. If it's a hundred brothers to walk in and say, listen, we've noticed that you've been ruling a certain kind of way. We're thinking about getting you off of the bench. Like, because
Hmm.
we're going to campaign in a different direction. This is one of the things that, and I'm go off a little bit in regards to the voting and so on and so forth, is that you have to have demands. If you don't have demands, technically your vote doesn't count. You're doing stuff on identity politics. Your vote don't count if you don't have demands. All right. So long story short, let me get back to it. Some of the things that we'll talk about in this series, we'll dive a little bit into parental alienation. I almost think parental alienation to me is similar to is similar to the N word, narcissism, which you hear a lot in the family court as well. I think it's overused, right? I don't think parental alienation is as prevalent as we want it to be. However, you know people do feel away. So we'll dive a little bit into parental alienation. Here's the big thing: is gatekeeping. Because of that tender-year doctrine, you'll start to see a lot of custodial parents want to um, control. Control comes up a lot in this thing, because you got to think there's a reason why we're not together. Shouts out to Chris. Dads matter for sure. There's a reason why we're not together. We don't completely agree on certain things. Possibly some of the things that um some of the key things in raising a child. That's a part of it. However, when you are no longer in the house, once again, splitting of the child, you are responsible for on you doing your timeshare, how you raise that child. Of course, as long as the child is not being put into any crazy circumstances, right? I'm not talking about to the extreme that some people want to tell it. If there's any kind of abuse going on, that's a whole different thing. I'm saying how you raise a child. You can't. It would be nice for us to come together, and this is how it should be. This is where you're not splitting the child, to make certain compromises on certain things and saying, hey, listen, this is the schedule at my house. Can we keep to somewhat of a similar schedule? This is how I want to feed the child. I don't want the child to eat junk all the time. This is my schedule. Well, I don't know if I have time to cook. Well, how can I help you out? How can I how can I how can I oh, you working this shift? Okay, tell you what. And the judge tells you this as well. Like, the judge gives you, and we'll get into the orders. The judge is going to give you an order, but they say, listen, you can go off the order if you guys agree on it. The order is just to keep this standard. So this is how you need this. You want to be civil, but more than civil. I'm trying to explain to people with the way that it is now. When we're saying, like, what is it, 70% of black women will not be married, right? And so we're having 70 to 80% of children growing up in single parent homes. And part of the title that we spoke about was functional versus dysfunctional. You can
That's
have a
right.
you can have a functional family with the two people not being together. Let's just say that's the case. I don't, but it takes a lot more. It takes a lot more because now we have to kind of over communicate, and not over communicate in the way of trying to control somebody, but over communicate how we can help each other. When you really think about it, it's better for you to stay together if you want it to be functional than to be apart. Because otherwise, now it's always this, it could be this power struggle. And one person is really going to have to become the mature person in order to make this a functional thing. Because just we left each other because it wasn't easy, or because of communication, or whatever the reason was that we left each other. But attempting to raise this child outside of that is going to be tougher than it is, you know what I mean? Tougher than if it was in the same house. Once again, hey, do you want me to come pick him up? What you want to do? That, and I dislike a lot of these words. No word I dislike more than this word, but it is a word that you're going to hear a lot. It's the act of both parents working together to raise their child after separation or divorce. I don't believe in co-parent. I just think people parent. That's how I was
That's it.
raised. I don't even understand it. I think putting that co in front of it invites more things. However, this is a term or word that's brought up and used a lot within the family court system. I think if you just go to parenting, a lot of the problems will be solved. However, co-parenting is a word. In order to co-parent effectively, there has to be this. I think a lot of people from the outside looking in will say this is not a healthy thing. However, I think it's balance. The word that we're looking for is a more balanced parenting way of doing things. And for people who are wanting to move on, what is your partner going to say about that? Like, what does my partner say when my oldest child's mother, I'm giving her the key to my house because it is what it is. My son is here. I'm doing this. Like, now, what does your other part? If you're attempting to move on and find a different partner, how is that partner going to take that in? And shouts out to the stepmoms, because I see the stepmoms normally are the ones that give the fathers a kick in the butt in order to go through a lot of these different things. You start to see them in it. They really push the brothers, because a lot of brothers come into this thing if they don't have their child, and the stepmothers are the ones that's really pushing it. But now you're bringing into a step father or mother into this situation, and what is their relationship going to be like with this other person? Another word I didn't put the definition up here, but it's high conflict. A lot of people tend to say, oh, well, I'm dealing with a high conflict parent. The other person's high conflict. I said, if you're in family court and you're going before the judge, it's a high conflict situation. So you can attempt to put the blame on the other person. And don't get me wrong, a judge can say, you know what, this person is being more high conflict or immature or whatever it is. However, how did you get yourself in that situation? I found it a lot easier for me to just say, you know what, I'm not going to say that person's high conflict. I'm not, who cares what they say about me? I'm in a high conflict situation. And it only takes one person to make this thing a high conflict situation. Let's get into this. This was interesting because as I got into it, and as many people that I know that have gone through the system, no one talked about a parenting plan and how you can put a parenting plan together. So people need to understand, like, there's a parenting plan. This is what's going to be the basis of the parenting order. So the parenting plan you can put together, and you all can agree on it, but it's not enforceable. So if I take the child now and there's no order, and then I say I don't want to give the child back, I can't call the police or the sheriff or someone to come and get the child during my time because there's no order. The judge hasn't signed anything. But now when you have a parenting order, now what happens is you can call the sheriff if the parent decides they want to withhold the child. Not only that, but there's certain things in the order that a parent can be held in contempt of. If you don't go according to the order, and you and the other parent didn't come to an agreement on something, then now you can hold a person in contempt and you take it back to court. And I think this is like where the majority of attorneys make a lot of money, because some people just don't want to give it up. Like some people want conflict to go out for the full 18 years of this child. 18, some states is 21. You know, the child some people just want this to happen. I see people take people for contempt, like, for every reason, and it is what it is. Hopefully, at a certain time, you'll work it out. Um, did I talk about gatekeeping? I think I did.
You did.
Yeah. So how long did I go? 55 minutes. It was a lot of information.
That was a lot of information.
It was a lot of information.
Definitely.
Once again, a master class. I see Chris say, I believe in parallel parenting. What's your definition of that? Parallel parenting, Chris? Because I initially started that in part of my case, especially if you're dealing with a person that just doesn't want to let it, you can't come to some type of agreement. But once again, now I think we're kind of, in my definition of it, right, is we have the same destination, you just take two separate ways to get there. That's how I originally wanted it to go. It's an interesting direction in doing it, especially if the communication and the relationship is not there. But at some point in time, like I said before, we can recognize, because here's the thing with the splitting of the child is that it can be corrected, right? Because at some point in time, it can be corrected. How do we get there? How do we get there? I think that's enough. if you if anyone has any questions in regards to it, I think you all definitely can put it on here. But man, I think this series is gonna be awesome. I'm gonna get into different strategies that's going on. We'll talk about how people are using the system as a weapon. They're weaponizing the system. I'm talking about restraint. And the strategy and the game plan is so simple. I used to say, man, where's the book? I said, because everyone seems to be doing the same thing if you really look at it. And one of my attorneys informed me of that. She was like, I was like, man, this is a strategy using shit. It's really, I wouldn't even call it a strategy. However, it is a weaponizing of the system, and you can use that in order to really break people down. Because what I've noticed, and I don't once again, I'm not judging a lot of fathers, right? Like now we know a lot of us grew up without our fathers. We wish our fathers played a different part. I'm not even I can't even tell you, because now it's only been 2 years, and it still takes about 2 years and possibly tens of thousands of dollars if you're not guided, if you don't have the information in order to especially as a man, in order to kind of get in your child's life, right? But 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, a lot of men weren't even allowed to talk. And you could spend as much money as you wanted to, and you were still going to get like nothing. And then when we start talking about different strategies, like you hear people giving people advice like, hey, listen, you ain't working out with a father while you're pregnant, move. Like move to a
Hmm.
different state, move to a different county, right? Because we can go through jurisdictions, right? For me, Palm Beach is a jurisdiction. But if that mother is pregnant and she moves and she establishes residency in a different state, in a different county for 6 months, now they have the jurisdiction. So now you have to petition them in that jurisdiction. So imagine what happens when the mother moves to Atlanta, or she moves to
Hmm.
St. Louis, or she moves to California, or she moves to, can you imagine what's going on 30, 40 years ago before the internet? Some people didn't even know they had a child until they got these papers in the mail.
Hmm.
All of a sudden you got papers in the mail saying that you owe child support. You didn't even know what a person was, and there's nothing you could do. Now you have to spend your money to go visit the child. These, and people are still using these. I'm not even calling them outdated strategies, because they still work. Restraining orders, because in certain places, you can have a restraining order just by disturbing a person's peace, meaning that you call too much, meaning that you raise your voice, meaning that they're threatened. That's used in some people's strategies. So you'll see a lot of people who never had a charge in their life. You don't know them to be violent people. Restraining order. A lot of judges are becoming more progressive, and they're starting to notice a lot of these different things. However, there's still a process because what a judge or anybody, we talk about judges are attorneys, and nobody wants to be held liable if something crazy happens. If this woman, this child gets abused, or this woman or man gets abused, and they attempted to get a restraining order, now you may be held liable for it. So people tend to err on the side of caution, and so now you may be end up fighting a criminal case along with this civil in this child case. So what I've seen is a lot of men start to give up. If you get hit with this, if you get hit with this, you get hit with that. These little different strategies. These young ladies are moving while they're pregnant. I've seen men abscond with the child. I've seen men who don't want to talk to the mother, and maybe a year, and they say, "Listen, I'll check back in a year or 2 years," and all of a sudden they filed abandonment on the man because you're not in contact with the person. So there's a lot of things that and characteristics that you're going to have in regards. I say patience, resilience, understanding. It's not, the wheels of justice aren't quick, so there's going to be times when things just seem to be going a lot slower than you would want, and you're possibly missing out on time with your child. You're possibly trying to get stable. This is another thing. You need to be stable. Where's the child? This is the question they're going to ask. Where's the child going to live? How many bedrooms? Do you have a bed? How much, count. And meanwhile, if you're not doing overnights with the child, you're getting hit with this child support. You got a W-2, you're making decent money. Excuse me, 600 to $1,000 a month, right? And I've seen people go on up from that. I've seen people doing 1,500, 2,000, 2,200. They in the state of Florida, they can take up to, what is it, 50? I think up to 50 to 55% of your paycheck, and most of it starts at 20 to 25%. And this is gross. This is pre-tax money. So there's certain things that you should do as a person, and we can get into that in regards to the child support section of it, in regards to providing insurance for the child. You get a deduction for that. So you should be providing, because guess what? You're gonna be paying for it anyways. So at least you get it for yourself. So I think we can go into some of the things that I've seen that I'm like, okay, a lot of this can be done better. Definitely can talk about these different attorneys that are kind of churning out. Some of these attorneys don't even really understand or know the law, and they want the easiest case. Not all attorneys are like that. However, some people are just trying to figure out what it is that they can get paid for, and it's not. And if you're dropping 4 or 5 grand, most people expect certain things. However, how do we find the right attorney for us? Maybe it's possible, and I didn't put that up there. We go pro se, which is meaning that you're representing yourself. Maybe that saves you a couple of dollars, but you definitely want to be guided in the right direction. And once again, look at that line at the bottom: consult a licensed attorney for legal advice. But there's a lot of ways for us, especially now, to kind of figure this thing out, and that's why we having this show tonight. All right.
Love it, man. You got a lot of love over there on Instagram too. Yeah, so we definitely want to. We appreciate everybody from Instagram to Facebook to YouTube that jumped in and that contributed. We definitely want to give another shout out to Chris Leo for all his contribution. Top contributor tonight, Chris Leo. Shout out to you, man. We definitely appreciate you. We see Nora Gregor, 1051, just jumped into, and Brownlee Castleray jumped in. Also, there was a few other people earlier that we put shout outs on in the comments section. So we definitely thank y'all. Hey, if this is something that y'all want to hear more about, please let us know. Whether it's this subject or another subject, just know this, that we take the time to not just experience these things, but we also take the time to study these things and bring it to you. This is Community Beacon for a reason. It's not just to hear us speak, but it's also to hear what you have to say about the subjects as well. And the more we hear you all speaking, the more we want to bring that to the forefront, because we have learned and noticed that there are many people that we give shout outs to that bring some heavy knowledge, that drop some heavy dimes in these comments. And we're definitely grateful for you. because we want this thing to expand. We want more people to be able to gain the knowledge that is not so easily accessible or that maybe you don't have the time to get to right now. So we definitely thank Mike for all of the preparation that he put into bringing this knowledge in a very clean format. And we'll be glad to see y'all again on next Friday. Be ready. We got at least 2 or 3 more of these that's going to go down. All right. That's my closing words, brother. What else you got?
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. We spoke about a couple of different things that we'll be talking about. We can definitely talk about figuring out a parenting plan, figuring out what the process looks like. If you want to talk about child support, we can talk about a little bit about that as well. Um, Listen, I just in my experience, it can be more than fair if you have the information. If you have the information and you're willing to put forth an effort, this system is not against you. You know what I mean? But you definitely want to put yourself in the best position. And I'm going to try to bring on a couple of people that helped me throughout the journey as well. So these are experts that you can bring your questions to. If you have any questions, so on and so forth, go on and put it in the chat, and we'll make sure that we engage. Appreciate you all.
Yeah, Brownlee said knowledge and wisdom. Yes, sir.
Shouts out.
All right, y'all. Love y'all. Peace.
All right, peace.